Chiron. Will he survive? If Xylos and his legion reach us before the Guardian wakes...
Xeres! Chiron! Look! Quickly!
They've arrived! Xylos' armada has crossed the border! Sound the alarm!
Your valley's time is finished. Your resources, your feathers, your land belongs to the Syndicate now.
And take the hunter with us! Bring the Ghost Saber to the Moon Fang Arena tomorrow, or your hunter dies, and your village starves with him.
Chiron! He's healed. The spirit of the valley has come back to us. Tomorrow the sun will rise over the Moon Fang Arena. If the Ghost Saber does not come, everything...
Where is your savior, Xeres? Where is the Ghost Saber you swore would protect you?
I don't know.
Then no one came. Moonfin, kill the hunter! We fight together, my friend, until the last breath!
Ghost Saber! Ghost Saber! Ghost Saber!
Kill them both! If my beasts can't finish you, I'll do it myself! You came here to steal our land and break our spirit.
High atop a sheer cliff, wrapped in drifting curtains of mist, stood the ancient settlement of Ash Hollow, its wooden and stone spires rising like old bones against the amber light of dawn. The nest-like dwellings of the Avians clung to the rock as they had for generations, and when the morning sun struck the towers, it seemed for a moment as though the whole cliffside remembered its own history. The Avians were a proud people, their bodies covered in feathers of gold and ash gray, their eyes sharp as any eagle's, their frames built for both flight and war. And yet on this particular morning, no one in Ash Hollow felt proud of anything. A weight had settled over the sanctuary, heavier than mist, heavier than stone, and everyone from the eldest elder to the youngest fledgling could feel it pressing down on their chests. Beneath the low, dim roof of the central stable, where the morning light fell in thin blades through cracks in the old timber, a great beast lay dying by inches on a bed of straw. It was a saber-toothed creature, white-furred and massive, built for the kind of violence that could level a war camp, but its stripes had been replaced by something far worse than natural markings. Thin lines of glowing, sickly toxin traced across its hide like veins of poison, alien scars left by weapons that did not belong to this world. Its huge body shuddered in long, uneven waves, and its fangs, each one longer than a grown avian's forearm, twitched with a pain it could not fight off. Kneeling beside it was Chiron, an elder whose feathers had long since faded to silver white, his face carved with the particular grief of someone who has tended too many wounds he could not fully heal. He pressed a cloth soaked in bitter herbal medicine against the beast's fevered flank, murmuring low and steady, the way one speaks to something that is more than an animal and less than a friend, though in truth it was both. "Peace, guardian of the old valley," he said, running a hand over fur as dense and soft as down. "Your body is fighting the poison the alien armada poured into our skies." Standing near him was Xylos, a warrior built the way the old stories describe warriors, broad through the shoulder, wrapped in rough leather armor and a heavy pelt cloak, a long spear resting against his back like a second spine. There was nothing soft about Xylos, not in his stance, not in the set of his jaw, and yet his golden eyes betrayed something rower than his armor allowed. Helplessness, watching the one creature capable of protecting his home lie broken on the straw. His grip tightened around his spear shaft until his knuckles paled. "Chiron, will he survive?" he asked. "If Xylos and his legion reach us before the Guardian wakes, how do we protect this valley?" Chiron sighed, the sound of a man who had asked himself the same question 100 times that morning, and draped a hand-woven blanket over the beast's back. "Our strength was never only in this beast, Xylos," he said quietly, looking up. "It lives in the soul of this land. But Xylos' forces grow stronger by the day. They are not like us. They are conquerors from beyond the sky, and they mean to drain our atmosphere and strip this world down to its bones." As if in answer, the saber-tooth groaned again, its fiery amber eyes fluttering open for a heartbeat before the darkness took it once more. Outside, the wooden doors of the stable creaked open onto a village trying very hard to look ordinary. Craftsmen worked, farmers moved between the fields, laborers carried their loads. But underneath it all ran a current of hushed, nervous urgency, the kind that spreads through a place the moment its people sense trouble on the wind. Young fledglings, their wing feathers not yet grown in, darted along the cobbled paths with the particular anxious energy of children who understand that something is wrong without being told what. A young girl spotted Chiron and rushed toward him, offering up a small wooden bucket of water and a few strips of dried meat, and Xylos accepted it from her with a gentle smile, resting a broad hand on her head. "Is the guardian warrior sick?" she asked, her voice small and honest. Xylos buried whatever he was feeling and answered softly, "No, little one. The air in the lower valley is foul today, that's all. He'll be well again soon. Go on now, stay close to your mother." He had barely finished speaking when a sharp cry cut through the morning air from the highest watchtower. A young scout dropped down onto the rocky crest in a rush of wing beats, pointing frantically toward the horizon. "Xylos, Chiron, look quickly." His voice cracked with fear. They ran to the cliff's edge together. Across the valley, beyond the tree line, a column of thick black smoke rose into the sky, and the wild birds that usually filled the canopy scattered in a panicked wave. Beneath it all, the ground itself had begun to tremble, the low, rhythmic shudder of thousands of boots marching as one. "They've arrived," Chiron said, his voice failing him halfway through the sentence. "Xylos's armada has crossed the border." Xylos narrowed his eyes and saw them clearly now. Alien shock troopers in rusted exo-armor emerging from the smoke at the tree line, riding monstrous, venom-dripping dire wolves and heavier war beasts still, black banners snapping above their spears, each one marked with the sigil of a snarling alien beast. "Sound the alarm." Xylos roared and his voice carried across the whole cliffside. "Get the elders and fledglings into the deep caverns. Secure the livestock, every warrior to your weapons." And just like that, the calm the village had been holding onto shattered. Elders hurried livestock into reinforced pens, mothers pulled their children inside and barred their doors, and beneath the fear on every face there burned something else too, a stubborn, ancient resolve to defend what was theirs. A wall of dust rolled up to the village gates, and out of it came the vanguard, riding beasts with dripping fangs and burning eyes that swept over the settlement like they were already counting what they'd take. At the head of them rode Xylos himself, a hulking, ruthless commander with pale synthetic blue skin etched with glowing technological markings, a necklace of polished bone trophies swinging at his throat. Beside his mount padded a colossal gray dire beast with eyes like cold white fire, and behind him marched endless ranks of alien infantry, spears bristling under their dark banners. From behind shuttered windows, the Avians of Ash Hollow watched in silence. A handful of brave men stood in the square with axes and hunting spears, and against the force arrayed before them, they looked exactly as outmatched as they were. Xylos brought his mount to a stop in the center of the square, his cape settling around him, and surveyed the village with a cruel little smile already forming. Chiron stepped forward first, hands open, his composure unshaken. Xylos followed a step behind, his spear gripped tight, his eyes fixed on the soldiers who had spread out around them. Xylos stroked the neck of his beast and turned his attention to the old elder. "Chiron," he said, his voice a low, raspy rumble, "last elder of the Avian bloodline, you already know why I've come. Your valley's time is finished. Your resources, your feathers, your land, all of it belongs to the Syndicate now." Chiron met his gaze without flinching. "Xylos, you've poisoned our skies and infected our sacred beasts. You've broken the balance of this world. This land is the ancestral nest of the Avians, and we will not hand it to a conqueror." Xylos laughed, a harsh sound that bounced off the stone walls around them. "Your nest," he sneered, gesturing at his own monstrous mount. "Look at what real power looks like. Your people are fit for nothing but service now. Give me your resources and that so-called sacred white beast of yours, or I'll tear the wings from every fledgling in this sanctuary myself." Something in Xylos finally broke loose. He lunged forward, driving his spear toward Xylos's chest, and only Chiron's quick hand on his arm kept the strike from landing. Xylos looked down at him with open contempt, his smile darkening further. Ah, a warrior, armed with a rusted spear. Remember this, Xers. Without your white beast, you Avians are nothing at all. The square held its breath. Xylos's gaze slid from Xer's back to the old elder, his glowing red eyes catching the light beneath his tattooed face, and his dire beast let out a low, vibrating growl that seemed to come from the ground itself. "Where is the Ghost Saber?" Xylos asked. "He left yesterday, didn't he?" Chiron didn't so much as blink. He lied cleanly without a tremor in his voice. "He's gone," he said. "He left the valley before dawn yesterday. There's nothing here for you." Xylos's face twisted into something between a smile and a snarl. He stepped closer, armor clanking against the stones, until his face hovered just above the old elder's. "You'd lie to me," he whispered, a dry chuckle escaping him. "You'd lie to protect a broken beast, then your people will pay for that lie." He turned on his heel, cape snapping through the air, and barked his orders. "Ransack the settlement, take every sack of grain, every farm animal, every weapon they have." His soldiers moved through the village like locusts, kicking in doors, dragging out grain sacks, splintering crates underfoot. Mothers clutched their children and wept quietly as their storehouses were stripped bare in front of them. Xer stood rigid, his knuckles white, his spear trembling in his grip. He knew that drawing blood now would mean slaughter for everyone he loved, and so he held himself back by sheer will alone. Xylos turned to face the crowd one more time, pointing a clawed gauntlet directly at him. "And take the hunter with us," he said. Two of his guards seized Xers by the arms. He aught them until a heavy blow to the ribs drove him to his knees, and then they bound his wrists in dark iron chains. Xylos mounted his beast and looked down at the villagers one final time. "Bring the Ghost Saber to the Moon Fang Arena tomorrow," he announced, his voice carrying across the whole cliffside, "or your hunter dies and your village starves with him." When the dust settled and the alien warband marched out through the gates, dragging Xers in chains and hauling away the last of the village's food, a heavy, desperate quiet fell over Ash Hollow. The villagers gathered in the looted square, staring at the empty circles in the dirt where their grain had been, and the elders bowed their heads while the youngest fledglings pressed close to their mothers. An old traveler stepped out from the shadows of a tavern alley, his pack heavy on his shoulders, his staff worn smooth by years of use, and approached Chiron with worry etched into his face. "Why does the Warlord want the Ghost Saber tomorrow of all days?" he asked. Chiron looked up toward the mountains where dark clouds were beginning to gather. "For a battle," he murmured. "In the Moon Fang Arena." The traveler's eyes widened. The Moon Fang Arena. Long ago, a hunter and his beast dared to challenge the lord of that place. They never came back. Chiron raised his voice so the whole gathered crowd could hear him. "The Moon Fang Arena is where hunters become legends or become memories. Can this village survive without its guardian? No, not without the Ghost Saber." And behind the crowd, near the barn doors, something moved. A shadow slipping through the trees toward the dark forest, massive and white-furred, its glowing amber eyes fixed on the trail down which Xers had been dragged. The wounded beast had risen, and it was already moving. Far across the misted, twisted lowland stood the Bone Shadow Citadel, a fortress of black stone and iron spikes, its walls decorated with the skulls of animals larger than any that lived in the valley. Smoke curled up from its watchtowers, and iron cages swung from the gnarled trees that ringed its perimeter. Deep in the dungeons beneath it, where torchlight threw long shapes across wet stone, Xer sat bound in heavy chains, his armor torn, dark alien blood mixing with his own as it ran down his arms. A wound on his forearm had begun to fester, dark and swollen, a lingering mark of the biotoxins his captors had used against him. He leaned his head back against the cold wall and let out a low groan as the poison worked through his veins, his chest heaving as he fought to keep the burning at bay. Down the corridor, two armored guards paced back and forth beneath bat-shaped helmets, and beside them lay chained dire wolves whose pale eyes glowed even in the dark, drawn by the scent of their captive. Through the small barred window high above his cell, Xers could see shapes moving against the night sky, hundreds of alien bats circling the fortress in slow, patient loops. He clutched his chest and let out a raw, desperate sound that echoed down the stone corridor, and the guards only laughed, tapping their spears idly against the bars. He sank to the floor, breathing hard, and understood with total clarity that time was running out. Tomorrow the sun would rise over the Moon Fang Arena, and if the Ghost Saber did not come, everything, his life, his village, all of it would end there. Night settled fully over Ash Hollow. A pale moon hung above the thatched roofs while dark bats moved through the starry sky, and the streets held a kind of silence that comes only from waiting. In the stable, Kyron stood with a flickering oil lantern, the village elder beside him gripping his staff so tightly it trembled. The light fell across the straw bed where the Ghost Saber lay, and the Ghost Saber was no longer resting. Its massive paws twitched as the dark lines across its fur began to crackle with something ancient and alive, its chest rising and falling in deep, ragged breaths as Kyron's herbal medicine slowly burned the last of the poison from its blood. And then its eyes opened, blazing with a fierce amber light. A low growl built in its chest, shaking the floorboards beneath it, and it rose onto its forelegs. The black cracks across its shoulders flared briefly before settling into dark battle scars, and it threw its head back and loosed a roar so loud it shook the foundations of the stable and rolled out across the mountains. Outside, the villagers gasped as the barn doors burst open and the Ghost Saber stepped into the moonlight, its fur gleaming silver-white, its fangs catching the light like polished steel. Kyron stepped out to meet it, watching as it turned its head toward the south, straight toward the Bone Shadow Citadel. "He's healed," the old elder whispered, something like awe breaking through his exhaustion. "The spirit of the valley has come back to us." Without hesitation, the beast broke into a pow. Urfel stride, cleared the village barricades in a single leap, and vanished into the dark trees, leaving nothing behind but the wind. By the next afternoon, the sun beat down hard on the roads leading toward the great amphitheater known across the region as the Moon Fang Arena. Delegations from every tribe and clan had gathered for the annual games, war elephants in iron armor, horned rams laden with supplies, ox-drawn wagons rolling along wooden causeways. The air was thick with roasting meat, boiling cauldrons, and the noise of thousands of voices talking over one another. Wooden signposts pointed the way toward the arena entrance, the beast stables, the trade market, the guest quarters, and among the crowd moved Avian families, traders and warlords inspecting the beasts brought in for the trials, armored boars, red stags with towering antlers, raptors with sharpened beaks. Bone tokens carved with old runes changed hands at the betting tables as people wagered on the fights to come. Above it all, mammoth tusks and gigantic skulls formed the bone-chiseled walls of the Colosseum itself, and thousands of spectators packed its stone tiers, their cheers rolling out across the jungle valley below. In the upper stands, Kyron sat among the village elders, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the sand far below where the first matches were already underway. "What if the Ghost Saber doesn't come?" the old traveler whispered beside him. Kyron didn't look away from the pit. "Then Xylos dies today," he said, "and Ash Hollow falls with him." Down on the arena floor, a massive gorilla-like beast slammed a reptilian creature into the dirt to roaring applause, and pit workers dragged the loser away in chains, while others raked the sand smooth for the next fight. From the royal balcony, draped in wolf-head banners, Xylos raised a heavy gauntlet, and the crowd went silent almost instantly. At his signal, the iron portcullis on the far side of the pit ground open, and 4 armored guards marched out, hauling Xylos behind them in chains, his wings bound tight against his back, his armor battered and bloodied. And yet he walked with his chin up, his golden eyes burning with a defiance that no amount of chains seemed able to touch. The guards forced him to his knees before the balcony where Xylos stood watching. Xylos looked down at him with a mocking sneer, then gestured toward a beast pen where the iron gate began to rise. Out of the darkness stepped Moon Fang, his colossal gray direwolf, its eyes burning white-hot as it scanned the arena, saliva dripping onto the hot sand beneath it. "Where is your savior, Xers?" Xylos' voice boomed out over the Colosseum. "Where is the Ghost Saber you swore would protect you?" Xers looked out at the thousands of watching eyes, then back at Xylos. "I don't know," he said, his voice raw but steady. Xylos laughed. "Then no one came. Moon Fang, kill the hunter." The great wolf bared its fangs and began to stalk toward him, claws digging into the sand with every slow, deliberate step. The arena held its breath as the beast closed the distance. Chiron gripped the railing above, unable to look away, unable to do anything at all. And then, just as Moon Fang's jaws began to gape wide, a shadow rolled across the afternoon sun. High above the arena's rim, a great swirl of forest bats surged over the mammoth skulls lining the upper wall, and before the watchtower guards could react, a flash of white leapt over the highest ornament and crashed down into the center of the pit with a roar that shook the stone tiers. The impact threw up a wall of dust and sand, and Moon Fang recoiled mid-stride, caught off guard for the first time. When the dust cleared, the Ghost Saber stood tall, its white fur catching the light, its dark battle scars glowing faintly, its fangs gleaming like drawn steel. It placed itself squarely between Xers and the direwolf, and threw back its head to roar a challenge that rolled through the entire Colosseum. The crowd erupted. "The Ghost Saber! The Ghost Saber has returned!" they screamed, pounding the wooden barriers, and up in the stands Chiron let out a long, shaking breath as tears cut lines down his weathered face. On the balcony, Xylos' triumphant smile vanished in an instant, replaced by something closer to disbelief. Moon Fang charged without hesitation, jaws snapping as it tried to flank the white saber-tooth. The Ghost Saber met the charge head-on, and the two beasts collided with bone-jarring force, claws tearing furrows in the dirt as they grappled. Moon Fang snapped for the Ghost Saber's throat, but the white beast twisted clear and answered with a heavy blow from its forepaw that sent dark blood spraying across the sand. While the beasts fought, Xers worked the hidden bone dagger from his boot and cut through the ropes at his wings, then snapped the last of his ankle chains against a stone pillar with a hard kick. Free at last, he snatched up a fallen guard's spear and took up a defensive stance, watching the soldiers around the pit with a hunter's patience. The fight between the beasts grew savage. Moon Fang scrambled onto a heap of mammoth bones and leapt down to pin the Ghost Saber beneath him, sinking its teeth into the white beast's shoulder as the crowd gasped in unison. Pain flared through the Ghost Saber, but instead of breaking it, the pain sharpened something older and fiercer inside it. With an explosive burst of strength, it rolled and threw the heavier wolf off its back, slamming it hard into the arena wall. "Finish it!" Xers shouted, driving his spear into the sand for emphasis. The Ghost Saber surged forward like a loosed arrow, and as Moon Fang scrambled for its footing, the white beast pinned it to the earth with its full weight, driving its fangs deep into the wolf's shoulder. Moon Fang let out one final, defeated whimper before going still in the dust, and silence fell across the arena, the Ghost Saber standing victorious over its fallen enemy, chest heaving, its amber eyes lifting slowly to find Xylos on the balcony above. Up on the balcony, Xylos' fury was total. His cybernetic markings flared a deep, unstable crimson as he stared down at Moon Fang lying motionless in the dust. "Impossible," he snarled, his voice trembling with rage. "An avian and a broken beast defying the syndicate." He slammed his iron staff against the stone, the sound ringing out over the silent crowd. "Guards, release the shadow pack, kill them both." High above, the swirling bats split apart, and from gates beneath the bone structures, a black mist began pouring onto the arena floor, coiling and thickening until it took shape. 6 more shadow-born dire wolves, eyes glowing white through the haze, forming a tight ring around Xers and the Ghost Saber, their growls rolling together into one low, unified sound. The spectators gasped and drew back from the railings. "This is treachery," Chiron shouted down from the stands, his voice carrying despite his age. "The duel was fought and won. Honor the ancient law of the arena." Xylos only laughed, cold and dismissive. "In my arena, old man, there is only one law: survival." The shadow pack closed in. Xylos pressed his back against the Ghost Saber's flank, wings flared wide to shield it, and leaned close to the beast's ear. "We fight together, my friend," he murmured, "until the last breath." The Ghost Saber answered with a low, steady rumble deep in its chest, baring its fangs as the first shadow wolf broke from the mist and lunged. The attack came from every direction at once. Two wolves leapt for Xylos, and he answered with a wide sweep of his spear that caught the first midair and threw it back into the sand, while a hard downstroke of his wings knocked the second off balance entirely. At the same moment, the Ghost Saber met the rest of the pack head-on, dodging snapping jaws and answering with crushing blows of its own, and every time one shadow wolf dissolved into smoke, another seemed to rise up out of the swirling dust to take its place. The fight raged on, kicking up a haze that swallowed the center of the pit, Xylos and the Ghost Saber moving together like they'd fought 100 battles this way, covering each other's blind spots without needing to speak. And then up in the stands, the crowd began to stomp, a slow, deliberate rhythm that built until it drowned out Xylos' shouted commands entirely, thousands of voices rising into one long chant. "Ghost Saber! Ghost Saber! Ghost Saber!" Xylos watched from above, his shadow pack falling apart piece by piece against the bond between the warrior and his beast, and something desperate flickered behind his eyes as he gripped his staff tighter, already deciding he would have to finish this himself. The dust began to settle at last, the final shadow wolf dissolving into smoke, leaving nothing behind but the ragged breathing of Xylos and the Ghost Saber in the middle of the quiet arena. Seeing his shadow pack destroyed, Xylos leapt down from the balcony himself, his staff striking the sand hard, his tattoos flaring unstable crimson as he drew a jagged plasma blade, his composure gone entirely. "If my beasts can't finish you," he snarled, "I'll do it myself," and he charged. He swung the blade in a wide, deadly arc, but Xylos reacted like the hunter he'd always been, throwing himself backward on a hard beat of his wings and narrowly clearing the strike. Before Xylos could recover his footing, the Ghost Saber lunged in from the side and drove a massive paw into his chest, shattering what remained of his armor and sending him tumbling across the dirt until he slammed against the base of the bone gates, disarmed and broken. The Ghost Saber closed the distance and set one huge paw over Xylos' chest, lowering its fangs until they hovered just inches from his face, a low growl vibrating through the air around them. Pale and shaking, Xylos raised his hands in surrender. There, and the entire Colosseum erupted into a roar of cheers loud enough to shake the stone. Xylos lowered his spear and stepped up beside the Ghost Saber, resting a steady hand on its head, and looked down at the broken warlord with quiet, unhurried dignity. "You came here to steal our land and break our spirit," he said, his voice carrying out over the whole arena. "But you forgot that the bond between a hunter and his guardian can't be cut by chains or poison. Take what's left of your army and leave this valley for good." Xylos' remaining guards rushed in and dragged their fallen leader away through the dark iron gates while the crowd jeered and hurled insults after them. Down in the pit, Chiron and the other elders pushed through to reach Xylos, tears of relief streaming freely as Chiron pulled him into an embrace, his hands shaking as he checked over his young warrior's wounds. "You did it, Xylos," he wept. "You saved us all." The Ghost Saber let out a soft, contented rumble, and leaned its huge white head against Xylos' shoulder as the villagers gathered around them in celebration. As the noise began to settle, the old traveler who had followed the crowd down into the arena stepped forward, reaching into his pack for a heavy parchment scroll sealed with gold and crimson wax. He unrolled it before Xylos and Chiron, and when he spoke again, his voice carried an authority that hadn't been there before. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. "I'm not simply a wanderer. I am the royal postman of King Aldrin, ruler of this whole region." The crowd fell quiet to listen. Every year, King Aldrin holds the regional beast arena, and whichever village's champion wins is freed from all taxes for the year that follows. This invitation was meant for another domain entirely, but after what I've witnessed here today, I'm bestowing it on Ash Hollow instead. He placed the scroll in Xylos' hands, and Xers accepted it with the kind of gravity the moment deserved. The villagers broke into cheers all over again, and Cairn stared down at the scroll in disbelief. Ash Hollow was not only safe from the alien invaders, but free of every burden they'd carried for the coming year. By the time they made their way home, the late afternoon sun had turned the cobbled streets of Ash Hollow gold, and Xers walked through the village gates with the Ghost Saber at his side. Families lined the streets to greet them, children running alongside the great white beast, women hanging garlands from the balconies, elders bowing their heads in quiet gratitude as the two of them passed. The Ghost Saber moved with a proud, unhurried stride, its amber eyes catching the last warm light of the day, and together they climbed to the high cliffside overlook where the whole settlement spread out beneath them, safe, whole, and free. Xer stood there beside his guardian as the sun dipped below the horizon and the wind moved gently through his feathers, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, there was nothing left to fear. Ash Hollow was whole once more.